Yeah, so David, I think, just kind of circling back to that last question, we think about everything that's been happening on the coasts. There's a lot of attraction to move out there, to invest out there, not just from the talent side, but, just from a investment standpoint. So why would we want to move to the Midwest? Like, why Cincinnati? Why is this like really the place where we need to make our investments right now?
Well, I think you point out something really important. There has been what's called the so-called superstar cities that have been growing disproportionately to the rest of our country. And what's really important is that we maintain and grow the talent base, not just here in Cincinnati, but throughout our heartland cities. It's critically important for not only Cincinnati, but for our nation. So you might be asking, what's fundamentally changed in the last 100 years? We used to be in a society where physical capital was a constraint, things like land and buildings. But land is difficult, if not impossible, to move. Buildings are very hard to move. But in an era where the biggest constraint that we deal with today is human capital, it's people. The big challenge is people can live wherever they want. So what we have to illustrate here is a very vibrant place where talent not only wants to stay, but talent who's not here is attracted to this community. And what's really important is we're competing against cities that have been at this for decades. And in many cases, almost 100 years. If you look at Silicon Valley and trace it back to its roots, you're actually looking at something that started in the late 40s, early 50s with Stanford University connected to Fairfield Semiconductor. So you're seeing an ecosystem that's developed over 70 years. For cities like Cincinnati and others here in the Midwest, what I call those so-called heartland cities, it's critically important that we be intentional and purpose-built about developing these just as quickly as possible. We believe we've done that here in the Cincinnati Innovation District.
And that's starts to get into what you would refer to as the knowledge economy. Is that right? So basically, like if you build it, then it starts to become more than just education at that point, right?
Yeah, well, what's really important about this is that, if you think about our biggest constraint being people, then organizations are seeking locations where those individuals are at. We know, if you look at all the data, all the research, that individuals are drawn to locations that have innovation. And what follows is organizations are drawn to those locations that have talent. But you got to be able to demonstrate that talent. You've got to demonstrate that place where innovation is occurring. And so the Cincinnati Innovation District here in Cincinnati gives us the opportunity to illustrate that for individuals, but as importantly, for organizations that are seeking access to those individuals.
I think we might want to back up. I think it just timed out.
What did it?
I think it's the.
Looks like the light turned
I
off
think it just
behind
timed
you.
itself out.
Yeah. All
So
kinds
one of the
things
nice things
that's
about advanced technology is, it does what it thinks it's supposed to do. But
Was
the
it dimmer than that? Was
disadvantage
it light? Well, how bright was it?
What does he mean through? Like he wants to see it?
Yeah.
Okay.
If we could we just have to talk to Elon Musk, right? He can figure that out for us.
Sure. Well, or just figure out how to keep the thing on. Put Greg in there and say, hey, it's on.
That's your job.
Was it on full blot? Was that the right light?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. They're still going?
And then just alternating to the other side.
I mean, can you just come talk to me? I'm confused about what he wants.
Julianne is just saying the same shot, but just on the left, like.
I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. So right like that, and then just the opposite way on the other side.
I can't come from that side.
Okay.
No.
Okay.
Because I would be jumping the line.
No
So I
worries.
need to be on the side. Sorry.
So let's talk a little bit about the vision for this amazing place that you've been working on, right? So for so long, there's been a lot of investment. It's been growing. It's got so much momentum. But what's next? What do you see as the next chapter for this in this book?
Well, a couple of different things. One, we have catalyzed clearly this innovation district, and we've done in years what other communities have done in decades, and we've been very purposeful, very intentional about the development of this innovation district. So we're going to continue to evolve. Just like our economy is evolving in this whole digital transformation, we want to provide an opportunity for individuals, as well as organizations, as well as cities to transform themselves. And we believe, as importantly, we have a model here in Cincinnati that not only has the state adopted in both the Cleveland Innovation District and the Columbus Innovation District, but we believe we have a model for other heartland cities that they can look in at this model and take away gold nuggets to help develop their innovation ecosystems as well. And we think, again, this is really important. We don't want to see just talent evolve to the coast, but we want to see talent really explode throughout our cities here in the US and beyond.
So tell me a little bit about the benefit of that, because me as a skeptic, I might say like, well, why would you want other cities if you're able to make Cincinnati like the next great place? Why would you want people to go to Cleveland or Columbus or have options in Tulsa or whatever? Like, what's the benefit of actually being able to share?
Well, when you think about this divergence that's going on between the so-called superstar cities and the rest of us, people are migrating to those locations. But why are they migrating? They're having a hard time seeing the opportunities in the cities that exist. And so there's a real opportunity, one, to create that environment where individuals don't have to move. They can actually live, grow, work, play, and learn in those existing environments. But as importantly, from an economic standpoint, the organizations that live in those communities today need access to that talent. And so if they can't find that talent in those cities, they're going to go to other locations, which doesn't really help us prosper as a nation. So at the end of the day, we believe it's critically important that Cincinnati win, but we want to see other heartland cities win as well. It makes us stronger not only as a state, but it makes us stronger as a nation, because we're in competition for talent, not just here in our country, but on a global basis. If you think about what's made America great, we've had a lot of natural resources here. We're protected by 2 oceans. There's just been a lot of things that have made this country great, but innovation has occurred here. But now that we're living in an environment where people are mobile, we've got to make a case for not just why Cincinnati, but why the United States, and why people want to be a part of this ecosystem as opposed to being part of another country's ecosystem. So it's really important that we illustrate this, not only for the people that exist here today, but for the ones who want to be a part of the American ecosystem.
So I think what's interesting to me about this project, when I think about innovation, right? Everyone has their own definition of what that term means. It could be computers, it could be AI, it could be cars. There's lots of different places for it. We had a chance to talk with Candace this morning, and just hearing the way that they're approaching it on the diversity scale. And I'm just curious, when you think about innovation, what is that, how big is that definition for you, and how important is it for that to be, it's your middle name, right? So how important is that for you to define?
Well, I think it's important that we understand it's very broad. It's bringing ideas to reality. And innovation has traditionally been thought about as a startup. That's where entrepreneurial ideas come to life. But the reality is, whether I'm a startup or I'm a very large, well-established organization, innovation and transformation is all around me. So having that entrepreneurial spirit inside my organization becomes really critical. So from an innovation standpoint, we look at everything from startups to Fortune 500 companies, and how do we support their needs? Because we're all in this digital transformation that's occurring independent of the industry and independent of the brand that's on that door. It becomes critically important to understand. And individuals are looking for those opportunities, looking for opportunities in startups, but they want to find those opportunities in mid-sized companies and large organizations as well. So this innovation district, in a very real way, provides an opportunity for companies to connect with the talent to help them solve problems that matter. And also provides them the opportunity to see the kinds of challenges and problems these organizations are dealing with, and to really play a part in helping them to change the game, so to speak, and create a competitive landscape that makes them economically stronger.
So the way that we've been kind of thinking about it so far is this idea of empowering transformation, right? So not just at an organizational level, but at an individual level, at a commerce city level, at a statewide level. I just wonder, can you talk a little bit about what that means for CID to actually be able to provide a pathway to actually transform my life or transform my organization?
So if you think about the pace of change, and the pace of change today, even if we go back 20 or 30 years ago, it continues to accelerate. And so we have to think about, what am I really good at, and what can I partner with others to really be good at? And so what an innovation district at its core allows is physical spaces where individuals can call, what I call those creative collisions to occur. And this is an opportunity for companies not only to collaborate with students and researchers and educational resources, but it's an opportunity for them to collaborate with one another to solve these problems in near real time. Because the big challenge we're all faced with is that the pace of change continues to accelerate. So having environments like this where we can creatively solve those problems is critically important. We know that proximity matters. And so these environments create opportunities for individuals to have those serendipitous moments that you wouldn't have any other way.
Well, and I think that kind of goes to show the way that, we talked with the Lieutenant Governor yesterday, and he was talking about what you all have done with intellectual property, and how that's really setting the stage for a pathway, a leadership pathway across the country. I've worked with UCLA, UF, you name the university, and it's difficult to move from knowledge that's owned in the lab to actually getting it made. I'm just curious if you can talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so when we think about change, and we think about the speed of change, anything that impedes the ability for me to get from point A to point B in the fastest
I'm sorry to
path.
interrupt. I did something weird again. I don't know why it keeps changing. It won't just stay on.
Oh, that's fine. Sorry.
It's too smart. It's too smart.
That's what I mean, technology.
Right?
It's catching up with
You
us.
just turn the light on. And
Somebody
stay
needs to be
on.
running around
I
because it's
know.
motion sensitive.
You stand in the conference room, wave your hands, make the lights go on.
So we were just talking about,
Motion detected, right? And that's why it will stay on. How can I get it to stay on?
wait for them to figure that out.
Sorry about that, y'all. I don't know why
You
that
okay?
keeps happening. Yeah.
We just need that X right above your head. That's the.
It's so prominent in the frame that it's kind of not an option to keep going. Sorry.
You're fine.
Yeah, I do think it's like, having worked with, those
Maybe just in
universities like I
between-
talked about in
Just
the
the only
past.
way it stays on is motion.
Can I make a
If can't-
suggestion in between questions? Just somebody wave their
Yeah,
hand in there?
absolutely.
Okay, all right, let's keep going.
Okay.
I am going to see whoever's standing there though, so they can't be standing there during the interview. Just step in.
Jim, come on in.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think
Thank you.
sometimes it's like a specific the licensing office, right? In some cases it's with the researcher themselves. In some cases it's with, the outside investor. But all of it, there's barrier after barrier after barrier. Everybody wants their money. Everybody wants their sign off on things. But that doesn't seem to be the case here. It makes it a lot easier to go from, wow, we had this amazing breakthrough. Let's bring it to life.
Yeah, so going back to the pace of change and just how everything continues to accelerate. So what impedes acceleration? Speed. What's enabling speed? Friction, right? So if you can reduce friction, you can actually get from point A to point B in a much faster manner. So when I came to the University of Cincinnati, one of the things that we did wasn't take a look at our IP policies and say whether they're good or bad. We actually talked to our customers. And so our customers being researchers, and we talked to corporate customers. And we found out a number of things. One, working with the university, it's a difficult thing for corporations to do. Traditionally we had policies that if you paid us to develop intellectual property, we owned the rights. Not a very friendly environment to engage corporations in terms of helping to solve their problems. Likewise, with researchers, we said the same thing. We own the IP, and we may or may not give you rights to it. Well, when you talk about venture capital, one of the key questions they want to know is who has rights to that intellectual property. So as we looked at this, we said, there's a lot of friction in this process, and how do we eliminate it? So we came up with a process that, one, has the ability that if I'm a company today, and I want rights to that intellectual property, there's an easy way to do that. We've got standard agreements. We make it very, very easy for corporations to engage with the university. Likewise, for researchers, we give them exclusive rights to their research. What are we doing? We're working to get that research out of the lab and into the marketplace just as quickly as possible. When the Lieutenant Governor came and saw what we were doing here and how we were really engaging companies and engaging our researchers to actually get intellectual property into the marketplace, he thought this was a great opportunity to expand this for all 14 public colleges and universities here in Ohio. And he came up with Ohio's IP promise based on the model here in Cincinnati. So this gets back a little bit to why not just keep it here in Cincinnati and not expose it to the other cities throughout Cincinnati or throughout Ohio. It makes us stronger as a state when we have a common function, when we start thinking about why that future researcher might want to be a part of our educational ecosystem, and likewise for a company. They can take a look at many locations throughout Ohio and say, this is a place I want to be because I know I can actually engage with the universities in a very creative way to actually solve problems that matter for me.
So you've made the personal decision to stay in Cincinnati, and this is, you know, your place of home, but also the place where you're building, you know, something that's pretty amazing, right? And I'm just curious, as you think about building a model, an actual model for a thing, right? What is that? What are the barriers that you feel like you may run into that you would want to make sure that we are all identifying so that we can get out in front of that CID is really getting in front of?
Yeah, we think we're changing the game here. Again, not just for Cincinnati. You know, we've done something here in years that, you know, other cities have taken decades. But those situations, whether I'm in Silicon Valley, Boston, others, they've been very serendipitous. They've just kind of happened. There hasn't been an intentionality to it. You know, as we've looked at the Cincinnati Innovation District, what we think other cities can take away from our model is really 4 basic tenets. One is you have to have leadership. As a community, you have to have a leader and the group supporting that leader to be able to champion this, because it's new for many communities working to do this. Second, we firmly believe you got to take a needs-based approach. You know, as a university, we've got 14 colleges, we've got lots of students, we've got lots of research. We think diversity is a real strength for our university, but instead of us taking a look at ourselves and have a solution, chasing a problem, we actually spent time with our partners to understand their needs. And we had a CEO tell us, he said, you're the first university ever to ask me about my problems. Everybody wants to tell me what they do. So this whole needs-based approach we think is critically important in terms of understanding in your local economy, what are the problems your local economy is facing and how do your universities and colleges help support that? As I shared earlier, we think speed is critically important to this overall process. You know, the ability to move quickly to solve problems that matter become important. So creating physical places where organizations can co-locate to actually work together to solve these problems that matter becomes really important. And then the last piece of this is access. Firmly believe, you go back to the University of Cincinnati, we've got 14 colleges, a lot of complexity associated with this. For an organization or an individual to try to navigate this would be very, very difficult. So we've established an organization here that provides a single point of contact to, one, understand needs, and then based on those needs, how do we bring the resources to bear to be able to impact and help solve those problems? Those 4 very fundamental things we believe are really critical to the success of this model. And again, this wasn't something that we just walked into and had that serendipitous moment to learn from. We actually were very intentional about this from day one. And you can see what here at 1819 we're at capacity, and within the Cincinnati Innovation District there's also a lot of development and organizations wanting to be a part of this ecosystem because they know that when they come to us, we're going to quickly identify what they're trying to solve and we're going to work aggressively to bring the resources to solve it.
That sounds amazing. I think just like articulating like what that looks like. I have 3 last questions for you.
Sure.
Before I ask Julianne if she has others that I've missed. My first is, can we dive a little bit into the needs-based model? Because I know that is very much an unconventional approach in being able to say, like you said, like you've never, a CEO asked you, like or said to you that they've never had a university ask about their needs. So I'm just curious, maybe give us a more concrete example.
Yeah, I mean, think about when's the last time you walked into your doctor's office and the doctor took one look at you and said, here's what's going on. I don't know about you, but I would run, not walk, from a situation like that. In a very similar way, businesses of all shapes and sizes have a variety of problems they're trying to solve. And instead of us looking at them saying, hey, we've got it all figured out, we have found that asking a lot of questions and really digging into those needs and being adaptable as a university to support those needs is actually strengthening the partnership between the university and these various corporate partners, again, from startups to Fortune 500 companies. What's been missing in this whole discussion is that universities and companies typically haven't had an organization to be able to sit in the middle to help transcribe needs into things that a university understands and vice versa. And this is really important. So if we go back to this concept of people being the limited resource, it wasn't too long ago that we were a very strong manufacturing economy. In fact, we're still a very strong manufacturing economy. It just doesn't require as many individuals to produce those goods as it once did. Well, we had this constant supply chain come about where suppliers were working to get real close to their customers and understand needs. If you go back to the late 70s, there was a lot of questions about quality and when are things going to arrive. And so this whole concept of supply chain took hold where there were strong linkages between customers and suppliers. What did that do? It brought down the inventory needs and increased the velocity at which operations could take place. What did it also do? It allowed organizations to talk about needs and how well are we doing to supply the needs that you have. We are now in an economy where people are the biggest constraint. We are now having to create supply chains around people, not physical goods. So this means tighter interaction between the organizations that supply the individuals or talent needed to the organizations that need them. And this really goes beyond just a university to a corporation relationship. It's also the university to high schools and middle schools about inspiring minds, about the opportunities that exist. And how do we work in partnership with corporations to actually engage high school students and middle school students to inspire them about the kinds of opportunities and the kinds of educational requirements that would be required. So in a very real way, we're taking a page out of the physical supply chain management book and applying it to the people supply chain and figuring out how to do this. And we're at the very beginning, not just as a city, but as a nation, in terms of being able to turn these conversations into meaningful pathways in terms of taking talent and getting that talent excited and engaged with those companies, which means we, as a university, have to adapt as well, which we are.
Yeah, so exciting. So I have two more questions. Aristo, do you want to do like...
Big companies and suppliers that know how to talk in a very real way. Companies talking to universities and back and forth, it's just not a natural conversation, but we're accomplishing that here.
What do you think other than just like, well, maybe we should start by talking about your relationship with Dr. Pinto, because it seems like that's a very pivotal relationship that's actually what makes this possible for that conversation.
Well, it absolutely is. President Pinto recognizes that we're transforming in higher education as well. And so he recognized very early on that there wasn't a good way for us to connect to understand those needs. And so in 2017, he created the Office of Innovation. I'm the Chief Innovation Officer, the very first Chief Innovation Officer at the University of Cincinnati. But he understood that in order for us to grow as a university, Cincinnati had to grow as well. If we have a strong Cincinnati, we'll have a strong University of Cincinnati, but the converse is not necessarily true. So we know that a lot of our students go work for organizations post-graduation. It's part of the idea of I'm coming to college, I want to get that degree and I want to find a job. But how well do we understand at that time what the needs of the employer are in this highly transformative time? So by setting this office up and having the opportunity to have that conversation provided us a unique ability as a university to begin engaging those conversations. But there's another really important aspect of this. Dr. Pinto understands that at the core, we're a public institution. Our mission is very different than a private institution. So as a public institution, how do we engage the community in this conversation as well? How do we bring other universities and colleges to this conversation? How do we bring other business leaders to this conversation? How do we work collaboratively to solve this problem? It really is a team effort. But the economic engine of this great university really hadn't been exploited to the point that it has now. And when I say exploited, I mean in terms of really hooking and powering that economic engine to be the fuel for this community. The other big issue that he recognized is that, here in the Midwest, we've kind of got that all shucks, what's the best word for it? I wouldn't say not invented here mentality.
Humble, yeah.
But we're just very humble,
Yeah.
right? We don't like to brag about ourselves. And the challenge is when you're in an economy where organizations are looking to find those talents, it's important that they understand that Cincinnati and the Midwest can be a destination location. So it's not just about making sure that the businesses here remain economically strong, but how do we attract other organizations to be a part of this as well? Another key piece of this with President Pinto is we've got a phenomenal educational ecosystem. So think about all the change that's going on in today's world. The days of where I just get a college degree and it stops, those days are over. I'm constantly having to update myself and read things and continue to educate. One of the things he recognizes is that within our educational platform called the University of Cincinnati, there's a very rich resource, a very rich set of faculty who have the ability to help organizations continue to grow as their needs change. So we really have opened up the doors with this office and his leadership to really connect in a very meaningful way all the wonderful resources here with the business community.
I think I heard a story that when one of your organizations came in, Dr. Pinto was actually willing to sit down and talk about what their needs were. Actually, the president of a university, think about how busy he is, sit down with a corporation, that's how much of a priority they are. Is that a story that you're familiar with?
Well, I'm very familiar with it. He does it all the time, and he and I both look and don't understand why this doesn't happen in other communities, because it's so important that leaders at these other organizations hear directly from the president and understand his vision. The other thing that I say is very unique about him is he very much listens. It's not a situation of what can the university, do for that organization. It's really trying to understand the needs of that organization and how can the university be leveraged to support it. So, it's not looking to, ask for necessarily a donation or ask for something from the organization. It's all about how can the university really support the needs of that particular organization, which I also find, as I talk to various circles throughout the country and the world, it's fairly unique. But we think we can, again, be an example for other communities in terms of how to accelerate this effort.
Well, I think, and I promise I just have two more questions. I know I keep saying that.
You're fine.
But I think what's so unique about Ohio is that it has a legacy of creating leaders, right? You look at the number of presidents that have come out of here, the number of strong governors that have come out of here, and then the legacy that Cincinnati is kind of taking on now to not only create the leaders for corporation, but also the leaders for thinking about how to do things completely differently, right? And I feel like the work that's being done here in the Innovation District with you, with Dr. Pinto, with all of these amazing, folks that you have connected with you, Candace, Jim, that is, you're just kind of like setting the stage and the platform and the model, right, for what needs to be done and how we're going to actually transform the heartland.
Yeah, I think part of the big challenge that we're all facing is, one, how do I get started and what do I do? It's easy to look at it as a very daunting task when you look at a Silicon Valley or Boston and recognize, your competition's been at this for 40, 50, 60 years. And it really was serendipitous in terms of how these organizations developed. And what I mean by that is there's really not been a playbook. And so how do I get started and what do I do? And so we firmly believe that here in Cincinnati with the Cincinnati Innovation District, we've developed a model, not the model, but developed a model in recognition that the framework's here, the blueprint's here. There are a lot of elements that other communities, other universities can look in on and learn from to then apply that to the problems that they're working to get done. But it's important that they understand that the intentionality of this is a real key driver and is also a competitive advantage for them as well. And so we're really excited about not only what we've been able to do here, how the governor, lieutenant governor have adopted this model in Cleveland and in Columbus, but we're also starting to get contacts from other communities wanting to understand how they can get started and what we can do to help be a model for them and helping them along their journey.
So my last question, and I promise this is the last one, but when you think about your kids, you're a dad, I'm a dad. I just talked about, my kids choosing to go to another place. Your kids, some of them are here, some of them have graduated. But when you're talking to another father, you're saying like, this is why to come to Cincinnati. It doesn't have to be to come to UC, but this is what the city has. This is what this innovation district can provide if you get plugged into it. Give me the pitch.
So what's fundamentally changed, and I'm not going to give away my age, but what's fundamentally changed from the time period when I was growing up and graduating from college to today is that the experts will all tell you that a college graduate today can expect to have between 12 and 20 jobs over a 30-year career and can expect to have between 5 and 10 different careers. So when they're picking a city, what's fundamental to this is where are those really interesting opportunities and how do they see it, how do they feel it, how do they touch it? That's why you see individuals still being attracted to these so-called superstar cities is that there's lots and lots of job opportunities that individuals can see. That's fundamentally changed in terms of how the younger generation, that young talent, views a particular opportunity. And so places like the Cincinnati Innovation District in a very concise, very close proximity to organizations being next to one another, an individual can see that there are a lot of opportunities here in Cincinnati for them to thrive. We always talk about the amenities, and the wonderful thing about Cincinnati, and the wonderful thing candidly about the Midwest is we've got lots of great places here. The challenge for an individual graduate from college today is how do I see the opportunities for me in my career? And so in a very real way, seeing is believing. And we already know here at the university, we know of students who are selecting the University of Cincinnati because they're walking through this ecosystem and they're seeing the kinds of cool things from startups to very large organizations that they can be part of. We know of researchers who are now coming to the University of Cincinnati because of our intellectual property processes and the ability to engage with organizations. Again, seeing is believing. We know of individuals who are now working at companies today here and staying in Cincinnati because of the Innovation District, because of the opportunities this presents. And again, we're taking pages out of playbooks of other cities who've been highly successful. What's really different? We're being intentional. And we're making this happen in years, not decades, which we think is critically important and will continue to be critically important, especially in the people economy that we live in today and we're going to live into well into the future.
We're just going to keep having to move things faster. It seems like your next innovation district is going to have to go twice as fast as you're doing this one.
Well, you talk about that, but if you think about an art studio, and I use this example quite frequently, an art studio does what? It provides palettes, it provides paints, it provides brushes. If you want to do clay, there's clay there. You can do some molding. If you want to do welding, you want to work with metal. It creates an environment where creativity thrives, right? And individuals can have those creative collisions to actually help further that creativity at a much faster pace. In a very real way, an innovation district is a physical place where organizations and individuals can work on those very similar creative problems. And in this economy, where things are moving so quickly, having the ability to interact with others to solve problems quickly becomes critically important. So having environments like this, from my perspective, it's a need to have, not a nice to have. So couldn't be more excited about everything going on here. And as I always say, stay tuned, because we're just getting started.
That's such a great analogy. Julianne, or Jess, is there anything that we didn't cover that you want to make sure we talk about? Oh, we have David with all of his wonderful
Yeah, well,
makeup
I'm
on.
looking good. I don't look so good.
Let's get him. We had some lipstick on this guy.
No, let's don't get too crazy, right?
We have that dark eye shadow coming in through it.
Yeah.
Well, I don't want you to look at me, so you look at him.
Yeah.
I was going to ask about passion, right?
Mm-hmm.
You run at a very fast pace. We talked about speed in general. You've also had a myriad of experiences, very successful prior to this, that are all driven by passion. What is the passion here that drives you? Why is this so important? Why should people care?
Well, and again, in this environment, I've got kids, and so I'd like my kids, to have an opportunity to thrive here in Cincinnati and thrive here in the Midwest, as opposed to seeing that there are locations out of this. But for me, I'm a former software executive, growing up here in the Midwest. I love the Midwest, loved everything about it. But when I left the software industry, it was very difficult to continue to stay here, because the really cool opportunities at that time happened to be on the coast. And so I made a conscious decision to raise my family here, to make a difference in the communities in which I live. And so my personal passion comes from the standpoint that I fully recognize that this is all about people, and creating opportunities for individuals to thrive here in Cincinnati and build their careers here is only going to strengthen overall what we're doing. And we are achieving that today, and it's something I couldn't be more excited about or more passionate about. So anyways, I don't know.
Yeah, I think that's great. I do think, Arista, can we just get a touch up and ask that question one more time?
He literally stayed on for like an hour while we were setting up. Like, he did not turn off once the entire time we were setting up. I don't know why it's doing it every 30 seconds right now.
It doesn't like us. Do we lose Arista?
Greg's sitting on the Greg's in there waiting.
Sorry about that. We're just
How are your kids?
my oldest is going to be 16 in about a month, which is scary time. That's a scary age, right?
Yeah.
My next is 14, and then 12 and 9.
And where are you based out of?
They live in Pittsburgh,
Okay.
so not too far away. Yeah.
Yeah, and you've got, I already know, you've got the Pittsburgh Innovation District with Carnegie
Yeah.
Mellon University of Pittsburgh right there. But
Yeah, and we actually work closely with a couple other companies that are there that help kind of like keep things going. One of our clients is
Where did
I don't know where.
I don't know where it is.
okay. Let's just
but this whole 12 to 20 jobs,
yeah.
it's very real. Like,
Right, that's a crazy amount.
when I graduated from college, I was told to pick that first job very carefully, because when I graduated, it was expected either A, work for that company for life, or maybe you'd have 1 or 2 jobs. It is not uncommon now for an individual to say,
So I
hey,
don't know
if
where
this
that
job
stuff
doesn't
is.
work out, what else is here?
Yeah.
And oh, by the way, my spouse is coming, what can you do to find them a job? And, candidly, when individuals see brands like Procter & Gamble, Kroger, and others, it doesn't feel like
Yeah.
Google, Facebook, but if you got behind the scenes of these companies, you would find that the problems they're solving are every bit as cool as the ones going on at those organizations.
Well, I think that's what was so interesting about talking with Candace and the work that they're doing, right? Because they're actively acknowledging that there's a destination with Kroger, with Procter & Gamble, with Fifth Third, and there is where we're starting with the ideas that these kids are having, right?
Yeah.
And how do we bridge that gap? And CID really does kind of fit really well in that space of being able to say, like, yes, moving from, how are we looking?
I think he's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think he's okay.
Okay.
Sorry.
Thank you, Julianne.
Dad. This is dad.
Being able to move from that space of like, hey, I've got a really good, or I've got an idea, I don't know how good it is, to, yeah, somebody wants to buy that idea or put it into place, and we're going to help fill that space.
Well, we all need, too, to your point, we all need models
Yeah.
that we can see, whether, you as a parent, graduate from college and your kids then see that as a possibility in a very real way. Whether I want to work in a startup or I want to work with a highly innovative company, my ability to see those opportunities become critically important. But, if I had to transverse many miles and many locations to do that, that would make it, one, not real interesting. It would make it difficult for me to see all of that occurring. By having these innovation districts, which are really compact locations, where I can see a lot of really interesting things in a relatively short period of time, it shows me in a very real way that there's opportunities for me and there's things that I can do. And we also think that's why from startups to Fortune 500s, we think the entire ecosystem is important. It's not all about startups. It's not all about big companies. It's really combining all of this to illustrate to individuals that there are lots of opportunities here.
That's the beauty of it, right? It's the building the small, mediums, and larges so that everyone can talk to each other, because you can't have the larges without the smalls, you can't have the mediums without the larges, and all of those things. So just to get back to Julianne's question about passion, do you mind just tackling that one again? What makes you passionate about this? You've done so many things in your life, and you decided to invest years in your family into this place. Like, why is that?
So I was fortunate enough at a very early age to work for a software company that became a unicorn. So we went from 4 million to a little over $1 billion in 7 years. It was a great ride. My wife's from the Midwest, said, you can do anything you want, but we're staying here in Indiana. So we stayed in the Midwest, and I found out very personally how difficult with my software executive skills staying in the Midwest was. I mean, a lot of the great opportunities that were coming my way were coming out of Boston, or they were coming out of Silicon Valley. During my tenure, I also had an opportunity to turn around the state's pension system in Indiana, and so it would not be untypical to talk to venture capitalists or private equity firms. And it was all the time I was getting asked, what's a guy like you doing in the Midwest? And so for me, it became very personal in that we've got a great opportunity here. One, we don't talk about it. Two, we don't illustrate it really well. And so this opportunity to be at a major public university in a major city and to really have the impact that we're having, to me is a personal journey, because hopefully this provides an opportunity not only for my kids, but as importantly, if not more importantly, for the individuals that are here today and the ones that want to be a part of what we're doing here, and they can see that the opportunities exist in our location. And as this model takes hold, not only throughout our state, but throughout the Midwest, that the opportunity to grow our heartland cities and to really help them accelerate, is extremely gratifying on my personal journey.
Yeah. Well, I can tell you that having come here and had a chance to meet Oscar Robertson, and seeing what he did and transformed, basketball here, and seeing what you all are doing, it's just, it's not a new idea, it's not a new journey at all, but it's exciting to see that legacy being kind of passed along. It's very cool.
Yeah, it is cool. And like I said, you've heard me say this multiple times, but we're doing in years. It's taken other decades to do.
Yeah. Julianne, is there anything else that you want us to make sure?
First time, yeah, so I want to approach, make sure he's got time.
Well, I'm fine, 'cause you already booked me to do some.
Okay,
Yeah.
so you're good, okay, good.
So we have until 2. We want to do some B-roll.
Okay, so maybe just one more.
Yeah.
David, a lot of innovation districts or universities have research parks. They have innovation districts. They have tenants. We look at our relationship with corporations and industry as partners. What does partnership really mean to you in our world here in the Cincinnati Innovation District? What does partnership really mean?
So when we think about partnerships and we think about engaging organizations from startups to Fortune 500s, this is truly a relationship where we both benefit. And fundamental to that relationship is a keen understanding of the needs of that particular partner. There's a recognition that not every need that partner has we might be able to solve, but by better understanding that need, it gives us an opportunity to, one, see what we can do to help solve that problem, and depending on the size of the need, maybe an opportunity for us to adapt and adjust our university to help meet that organization's need. If we can help strengthen that partner and make them stronger here in our community, that's going to make us stronger as a university. But the converse is not true. We can't be strong as a university and not have a strong partner. So we very much treat these relationships as something that's critically important for our long-term success. We also recognize that not every organization that engages with us wants to have a strategic relationship. And we're fine with that too. We want to understand the spectrum in terms of how an organization wants to engage, and we respect every one of those. For the ones that truly want to become partners with us, we're committed. We're all in as a university in terms of not only deeply understanding those needs, but working aggressively every day to help support them.
Well, it kind of goes back to what you were saying before about what partnership really looks like, which is when you actually ask. So as an individual, if I ask my partner what they need, how can I actually help them if I don't ask that question, right? So that's what true partnership really looks like, it seems like.
Well, and it creates a trusted relationship. I mean, if you think about any partnership and any relationship, it's all about trust. And universities and corporations and high schools and everything else, we really just haven't communicated. And as I stated earlier, we're now in the people economy where understanding needs and how we can adapt to those needs becomes critically important. Now, the co-op program did start here at the University of Cincinnati, so one of the things that's very fortunate about us is that experiential learning, the ability for our students to actually get real-world experiences, is critically important. But we're taking the next step, which is to say, help us understand the problems that you're having a hard time solving or that would help you advance your business. And we hear three basic things. One, we need access to students. We need more talent, in our organization to help us drive what we're doing. So the students gain, but the company does as well. We need access to your research. And the advantage that we have as a Carnegie Level 1 research institution here in Cincinnati is we're already used to working on applied research on problems that matter. So we've got researchers here who know how to engage with organizations. And the third piece is educational resources. We recognize, just given the pace of change and how the world is adapting, that with the employee base, I got to continue to upskill and reskill those individuals. So how do we leverage the university to help support that? And we recognize, both for our partners and at the university level, that we're adapting all in real time and that we're collectively working to solve these problems. And to me, that's the real advantage, is that we're walking into these relationships with the understanding that we're going to learn from one another and that we're committed to helping solve each other's problems.
That's great. Jess, is there anything else?
I think I covered everything.
Do you want to check with Julian? So your daughter's in business school?
Yeah. So she's thinking data analytics or finance. So you can tell there's a math theme kind of going on
Yeah,
throughout my house.
Yeah, smart kids.
Well, they're smart, but I tell you, the thing that I've learned, so I was in the software industry for a long period of time. As I shared, I was in public
Can we get a
service.
slate, please?
Worked for Governor Mitch Daniels, turned around the state pension system, and I've been in higher ed. And so
Yeah.
what I've learned about at least those kinds of degrees is it provides you the critical thinking skills that are needed in the environment that we're all
That's cut.
facing today.
It's that